April 2026. In Islamabad, high-stakes negotiations are underway. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, alongside Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, is sitting across from senior Iranian officials and Pakistani officials, mediating in an attempt to extend a fragile ceasefire that could stabilize an increasingly volatile region. Lebanon is not a side topic in these talks. It is one of the central pressure points being discussed at the table. While this is happening, something strange happens. Two American Navy destroyers, the USS Michael Murphy and USS Frank E. Peterson Jr., enter the Strait of Hormuz without prior coordination. These destroyers are big vessels, almost 10,000 tonnage, armed with an assortment of anti-surface missiles. Interestingly, these destroyers were reportedly using a cloaking technology which reduced their radar signature, and to the radar it appears as if it's either a small boat or a merchant vessel trying to sneak into the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian radars pick them up, their signature does not match with their profile, and drones with electro-optical sensors are launched to confirm the identity of these vessels. Iran responds immediately with a direct warning. In quotes, "This is the last warning." A drone approaches one of the ships, and the message from both sides is unmistakable. Negotiations are happening in Islamabad, but military signaling is still active in the Gulf. Meanwhile, Pakistan Navy conducts a quiet but critical rescue operation of a merchant vessel, ensuring maritime stability at a moment where the region is one incident away from escalation. Of course, that is what is dominating global attention. Diplomacy in Islamabad, naval tension in Hormuz. But while the whole world watches those two theaters, another war is unfolding away from the spotlight. In southern Lebanon, in a town called Bint Jbeil. And what is happening there is not separate from the negotiations. It is the battlefield reality that is shaping them. Today we want to get into this particular battle waging in Lebanon, because I feel that the world spotlight has not quite shown this in the right light. My name is Qasim, and you're watching Radar Mode on Pakistan Connect. Right now, most of the global conversation is focused on whether the Islamabad talks between the United States and Iran can stabilize the wider regional conflict. But what is often missed in these discussions is that key parts of this war are not paused while diplomats talk. They are actively escalating in parallel. Lebanon is one of those pressure points. It is not a secondary issue in the negotiations, it is central to them. And while diplomatic channels in Islamabad attempt to create stability, the battlefield in southern Lebanon is moving in the opposite direction. That is why the Battle of Bint Jbeil matters, because it shows what happens when diplomacy and battlefield reality are no longer aligned, and when strategic negotiations are forced to respond to events ahead unfolding on the ground. The 2026 Lebanon War, which reignited on March 2nd after a ceasefire collapse, had already become deeply connected to broader U.S. Iran-Israel tensions. By early April, Lebanon was not just a local conflict zone. It had become part of the bargaining framework inside the Islamabad talks. Then came April 8th. Israel launched Operation Eternal Darkness, striking over 100 targets across Beirut, the Bekaa Valley, and southern Lebanon in a span of just 10 minutes. The scale was significant, with hundreds reported killed and over 1,000 wounded. What made it strategically important was not just the intensity, but the timing. These strikes occurred while US and Iranian officials were still actively engaged in talks in Islamabad. That moment revealed a key contradiction in the system. Diplomacy was attempting to contain escalation while escalation was continuing independently of the diplomacy, mostly on Israel's part. Within 24 hours, that contradiction shifted from airstrikes to ground war. On April 9th, Israeli ground forces moved into Bint Jbeil, a strategically important Hezbollah stronghold in southern Lebanon. The objective was clear: isolate the town, apply pressure from multiple axes, and establish control over a key urban center. Israeli units advanced towards central locations including the town market, the Musa Abbas complex, and surrounding urban nodes. Armored units, infantry formations, and engineering vehicles were deployed in a coordinated push designed to establish dominance in the dense terrain. Hezbollah responded not by attempting to hold fixed lines, but by allowing Israeli forces to enter the battle space and then engaging them under the conditions of their own choosing. It was a battlefield of ambush. This immediately transformed the battle from a conventional advance into an attritional urban engagement. Now, before we understand the battle, we have to understand the platform, because this is very, very important in this discussion. The Israeli advance was being led by their main battle tank, the Merkava Mk4, main variant used in the southern Lebanon in April 2026. It is an Israeli-designed main battle tank built from ground up for Israeli battlefield realities. In military circles, the Merkava is held in very high esteem. It is supposed to be one of the best tanks ever built, especially for survivability. The engine is placed in the front to act as a shield. The gun or the turret is low profile. It's modular composite armor with explosive reactor armor tiles covers the front and the sides. What this means is that if a projectile hits the tank from the sides, the reactive tiles explode outwards, thus containing the explosion or the incoming projectile to explode outwards rather than inwards and towards the tank. It weighs around 65 to 68 tons, mounts a 120 mm smoothbore gun with advanced fire control systems, and can fire guided anti-tank missiles from the barrel. These tanks are equipped by the Trophy active protection system, uses radar to detect and fire explosively formed projectiles to intercept incoming rockets or missiles. It is highly mobile in rough terrain and urban areas, with excellent forward armor and good secondary armament, machine guns and smoke launchers. However, its weakness became obvious in Lebanon. Even though the sides and the front and the back are very well protected, there is an Achilles heel in this tank. The Trophy system struggles against simultaneous or top attack salvos. What that means is that the fire towards the tank is not coming from the side or the front or the back. It is coming from the top. And of course, if it is being struck from the top, the tank's size and weight make it a large target in a close quarters village fighting. The Merkava was designed to dominate in this particular battlefield. In Bint Jbeil, the assumptions behind its design were put under test. And there the Merkava came face to face with the Almas system. The Almas is an Iranian-made man-portable anti-tank guided missile that Hezbollah has used extensively since 2023. It is essentially a reverse-engineered and improved version of the Israeli Spike missile family. Key attributes include fire-and-forget systems or semi-automatic command line of sight guidance. It has a tandem high-explosive anti-tank warhead. These rounds have two explosive warheads. The first is used for penetration, and once the armor has been penetrated, then the second one explodes for complete destruction of the tank. The second most significant feature in this scenario is the top attack mode, where the missile climbs and dives onto the thin roof armor of the Merkava at a range of 4 to 8 kilometers, depending on the variant, and an infrared seeker that is very difficult to jam, almost impossible, because the tank cannot stop producing heat once it's in the battlefield. It is light enough for a 2-man crew to carry and launch from concealed positions in buildings, orchards, hills, making it particularly effective in terrain like southern Lebanon. In the early April 2026 clashes around Bint Jbeil and surrounding villages, Hezbollah turned classic guerrilla tactics into a structured anti-armor engagement system. Teams equipped with Almas and coordinate missiles positioned themselves in multi-story buildings, agricultural cover, and elevated terrain. Israeli tanks entering narrow streets or constrained movement corridors were then engaged with coordinated missile fire from multiple directions. The top attack profile of the Almas played a critical role in these engagements. It bypassed the Merkava's strongest frontal protection and trophy system by targeting the thinner roof or rear engine compartment. Between April 9th and April 11th, multiple engagements resulted in Merkava tanks being disabled or destroyed through roof penetration or engine fires. Hezbollah frequently combined missile fire with mortars and small arms fire, creating layered engagements that disrupted Israeli infantry support and forced armor units into tight quadrants where they could be easily targeted. This reduced operational speed and increased exposure time, further amplifying vulnerability. As the battle unfolded, competing claims around armor losses became part of the wider war narrative. Hezbollah-linked sources have claimed that in the single day, On a single day of fighting in late March, up to 21 Merkava tanks were destroyed, with cumulative figures since the start of the escalation ranging between 75 to 100 tanks destroyed. More conservative assessments tied specifically to April suggests significantly lower confirmed numbers, with documented incidents concentrated in Bint Jbeil sector during the April 9th to April 11th ambush phase. But regardless of verification disputes, what matters operationally is the effect of these claims and confirmed incidents have on the battlefield behavior. Each reported loss contributes to a growing perception of risk. And in armored vehicles, perception directly influences tempo, caution, and maneuver decisions. Loss of 100 tanks without the other side fielding any armor whatsoever is mind-blowing. This battle will go down in the military history as a very significant affair, when one side was fielding the best tank in the world, so to speak, and it was overpowered by a reverse engineered system that used asymmetric approach. By the 13th of April, Israeli forces had successfully encircled Bint Jbeil and secured major access routes into the town. However, encirclement did not translate into full control of internal movement. Hezbollah maintained the ability to strike from concealed positions within and around the urban terrain, turning the town into a persistent engagement zone. This creates a situation where territorial control existed on paper, but operational freedom inside the area remained contested. One of the defining features of this battle is the economic imbalance between systems. The Merkava represents a multi-billion-dollar armored platform, while the missiles used against it are significantly cheaper and highly portable. This asymmetry allows a force with limited conventional capability to impose disproportionate damage on a technologically superior opponent. The result is not decisive destruction, but sustained pressure, forcing slower movement, higher caution, and increased reliance on indirect fire support. The Battle of Bint Jbeil reflects a broader evolution in modern warfare, where precision-guided, portable anti-armor systems are increasingly able to challenge heavy armored platforms in dense urban terrain. This does not eliminate the role of tanks, but it changes the conditions under which they can operate effectively. The key factor is no longer just technological superiority, but the match between system design and battlefield environment. The past week of the Israel-U.S Iran conflict has shown a system under simultaneous pressure across diplomacy, naval confrontation, and ground warfare. In Islamabad, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, along with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, has been engaged in fragile ceasefire talks with Iranian officials. But those negotiations have been continuously shaped by events unfolding on the ground and at sea. The Strait of Hormuz incident, involving U.S. destroyers and Iran's direct warnings, has underscored how quickly maritime tensions can escalate even during active diplomacy. While Pakistan's role in stabilizing commercial shipping highlights how regional actors are being pulled into managing spillover risks. On land, the fighting in southern Lebanon, especially around Bint Jbeil, has remained a key pressure point in the wider war. Israeli forces continue to face sustained losses and resistance from Hezbollah, with repeated ambushes slowing their advance and turning the operation into a costly attritional battle rather than a rapid breakthrough. Taken together, these developments point to a growing strain on Israel-US strategic position. Military pressure on multiple fronts, increasing economic risk, are feeding into the political pressure on both Washington and Tel Aviv. This is slowly pushing decision makers, including Trump and Netanyahu's political circle, towards a more urgent search for de-escalation and negotiated exit options. In simple terms, the war is no longer contained to the battlefield. It is now a global pressure event. And that pressure is increasingly forcing all sides towards talks about ending the conflict before it expands further. That's all from Radar Mode this week. My name is Qasim and you've been watching Radar Mode on Pakistan Connect. Until the next episode, stay alert, stay aware, and stay vigilant. And keep your radar mode on. I'll see you next week.